Township of Howell Zoning Board of Adjustment, Monday, March 13th, 2023, regular meeting. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Zoning Board to be an open, adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on December 13th, 2022, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Tri-Town News. Second, on December 13th, 2022, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on December 13th, 2022, said notice was posted in the office of the zoning board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues of what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and the decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. For any members of the public wishing to ask questions or comment on an application, you will need to use the raise your hand feature when the chairman opens up the hearing for members of the public. Once you are brought into the meeting, you will need to have both audio and video, and you will be sworn in and required to give your name and address. If you are calling in, you can press *9 to raise or lower your hand and *6 to mute and unmute yourself.
Thank you, Eileen. May we please have a roll call?
Mr. Barillo.
Here.
Mr. Cantor is excused. Mr. Hughes.
Here.
Mr. Mertens.
Here.
Mr. Roscoe.
Here.
Mr. Stanton.
Here.
Mr. Ryan.
Here.
Mr. Rubel.
Here.
And Chairman Saya.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to the
republic
For
for which it stands,
One
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
liberty, and justice for all.
Okay, we're getting better with that. Okay, Mr. Bear, can you please swear in the professionals?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, yep. Shari, you're good. Okay. Do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And then please just, each of you, starting with Jen, then Shari, then Jordan, just say your name for the record.
Jennifer Beam.
Shari Spiro.
Jordan Rizzo.
Your professionals are sworn, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Eileen, item 5 on the agenda, approval of minutes. Any minutes?
No minutes to approve tonight.
Thank you. Eileen, item 6, vouchers. Any vouchers?
No vouchers tonight.
Okay. Eileen, that brings us to item 7, which is correspondence. Any correspondence?
We did add a resolution for number 8, and also I heard the zoning board meetings would be going back to in-person in June, and the board may want to discuss this, whether it's now or later. It's up to you.
I'd like to dispense of it now, since we have, all the members, we got their attention, and before Billy decides he's going to recuse himself and leave us, so he can at least participate. So, Andy, we talked about this a little bit. I polled the board members, and they're 7:30. We can take another poll today. We're going to go live in June with the first meeting. And Eileen, what would be that date in June, that first meeting?
June 12th.
June 12th. Okay.
And it's really just up to the board, Mr. Chairman. I don't think the township had any issues whether the meeting started at 7 or 7:30, so it's really up to the board.
All right, so let me start with in seniority order. I'll go with Rich Mertens first. Rich, what would you prefer?
I have no preference. I would also like to include the professionals and their input on that as well, but I'm good either time.
That's a good point. Let's hear what the professionals have to say. Jen,
I'm good either way.
Sherry,
Same for me.
Jordan?
Either. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so you're good either way. Matt?
I'm good either way too, sir. I'm happy. I guess also too, can we add in there what time we want to end?
Yeah,
Well, typically
Mr. Chair, I just want you to know I got a text from Charlie. He's good either way too.
Okay, great, thank you. Listen, we, in our rules, we're ending at 10 o'clock at night. And, you know, I remember back in the day when I was on the board, I was going to 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning sometimes, you know. I can't do that anymore. Nor do I think there's an appetite to want to go that way. So I think we should leave it at 10 o'clock. And if we have an application before us, we can agree to extend it if we want to get through it and push it, if that's the pleasure of the board. But as far as the start time, Matt, you said you're good. So
Yeah,
Jose,
and the only reason I brought up, Mr. Chair, the end was because I'm just thinking like pre-COVID, we were 7:30 to 10:30. So I mean, 7 to 10 is fine. Whatever works for the board, I'm willing to do whatever.
yeah. Jose, what would you like?
For me, 7, start 7.
7. Okay, so I think we're leaning towards that, but let's hear what Nicholas, since you're unmuted.
7 o'clock works for me. Either way, I mean,
Great.
7 o'clock is preferable, but I don't really care.
All right, Billy,
I would prefer 7 if possible.
then 7, it sounds like it's going to be it. Mike, are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm good either way. 7's fine for me.
7, 11.
Mike Ryan, Mike Rubel are both good with it?
7's
So,
fine.
Okay, so 7 o'clock it'll be, on June 12th, we'll be live in the, in Town Hall. And, as far as amending our, you know, 10:30 is, you know, what we used to go to, in other words, 7:30 to 10:30. I think we should have it still in our rules that we have at 10, and then if we decide that we can extend it to hear something, we'll close it out, you know, by 10:30, quarter to 11, and get out of there.
Sounds good to me, Mr. Chair.
I'm
Okay,
good with that.
otherwise we'll push it. All right, so we're good then. We made that decision, Eileen. Does that sit well with you?
That sounds good to me.
Okay, great. Then
Nothing
next
official.
Eileen, I'm sure you and Eileen will be on it. Just make sure you do the notices for the you know, for the in-person meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and it gives us plenty of time to notice, which is important. Okay. All right. So any resolutions tonight?
We do have one resolution for case number BA 1911, K10 Holdings LLC. Resolution granting preliminary and final site plan approval. Eligible voters, Barillo, Hughes, Mertens, Orozco, Ryan, and Rubel.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair.
I got a motion by Hughes. Do we have a second?
Second,
Second, Orozco. Roll call, please, Eileen.
Mr. Barillo,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Mertens,
Yes,
Mr. Orozco,
yes.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes,
and Chairman Saya.
Yes,
Resolution approved.
great. All right, that brings us to the first case. And that is case number BA 08-24A, Rod Zarelli. This is a use variance and preliminary and final major site plan. The description: application of Rod Zarelli as applicant and owner seeking use variance and preliminary and major final site plan approval on premises known as Block 49, Lot 11, 255 Squonkam Road to modify the existing warehouse building, including the addition of 4 new overhead doors to provide a total of 7. The 2 smaller existing buildings, 851 square feet and 2,377 square feet in size, are proposed to be removed. And a new fenced outdoor storage area is proposed. The existing residential dwelling is proposed to remain. Driveway access to the site is also proposed to remain the same. The existing chain link fence along the property frontage is proposed to be relocated closer to the street, and the existing site ID sign is proposed to be relocated further back from the street. No other changes are proposed with this application. This application was previously heard on November 28, 2022. This application was scheduled for February 13th, 2023, when it was carried to March 13th, 2023. The expiration date is April 2023. And for my fellow board members, if I remember, this was the site where there was some storage on there, and we had some questions back when we originally heard the application. So there were some questions, and the applicant has gone back and is ready to probably address all of that. So with that being said, Mr. Bear, I think Mr. Alfieri's got this case. Is that correct?
You are correct, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Alfieri.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Salvatore Alfieri again on behalf of the applicant. Before we begin, I need to clarify if we have enough eligible voters for this. When we were scheduled in February, we did not have enough because some members didn't listen to the tape. So can we, Eileen, do we know?
I have 5 members that certified so far, and I think Mr. Stanton, have you certified?
I don't believe I should have to. I was at that meeting. I remember explicitly discussing outdoor storage. The wife or occupant, one occupant of the home, uses the street for access because they were worried about parking inside the site. I remember this application, unless it was heard at another meeting. I'm certain I was there.
And I was
Okay,
there
you were
too,
just
as Eileen.
late, so I just wanted to make sure.
So Eileen, who's eligible? We had Cantor, Hughes, Mertens, and Sayah on the agenda.
And
And
Mr. Barillo and Mr. Ryan sent me their certificates to vote.
I
Okay,
believe I was there too, Eileen. I remember this one as well.
Okay, if you guys could just send me your certification tomorrow.
okay, so we have 7 then, that's fine, thank you. After the November hearing, we did receive many of the comments that the board members had and the board professionals had. We had a tech meeting with the board professionals, and then we made a resubmission to the board. One of the most significant changes, and our engineer will get into in more detail, was that we eliminated the house, which was a D variance in and of itself. So we eliminated one of the D variances. And then we made various other changes, including landscaping, etc. We also revised the building. And Eileen, Ryan McDermott is our engineer that I'm going to ask that you let in if possible.
Sure, he's coming into the meeting.
Thank you.
Mr. Alfieri, real quick, you say you got rid of the house?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure.
Right. Yeah. My client points out not yet, but it's proposed to be eliminated. Yes.
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. Thank you.
Ryan, are you on?
I'm on, Sal.
Thank you. You testified at the last hearing, is that correct?
That's correct.
Ryan, I mean, Andy, do you want to re-swear
Well,
him?
since it's a new year, Sal, it was right,
Okay.
wasn't that November of last year?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, Mr. McDermott, do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name for the record, spell your last.
Ryan McDermott, McDermott.
Witness is sworn, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Ryan, you were qualified as a licensed engineer at the last hearing and testified in that capacity. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Can you share with the board, unless Eileen has to, the most recent plan that was submitted so that you could describe for the board what has changed since the last hearing?
Sure, I do have the ability to share, so I'll bring that up now. And I think just, it sounds like most of the board members remain familiar with the application, but just to touch from a high level, and can you see my cursor or just the screen?
We could see it, but you have.
Can you enlarge it?
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to make sure we were following along on the same page here. So this is an aerial map.
Brian, did we mark this or is this a new exhibit?
This is an aerial map exhibit that was shared last time around.
Okay.
This is an aerial map exhibit of the existing conditions, and just as a very quick refresher, the property is located in the SED zone. It was recently rezoned to SED1. It is immediately north of the Howell Ice Arena on Squonkam Road, also known as Lakewood Farmingdale Road, on the southbound or west side of the roadway. And as you can see here, most of the development is confined towards the eastern portion of that site, with the rear being mainly restricted and wooded area via wetlands back in this region. And as Sal mentioned, one of the primary changes that the applicant made is he's proposing now to eliminate the residential dwelling, which is at the front portion of the lot here, along with the other buildings that remain on site. So the only building that will remain is this existing one here. And I'll get into a summary of the changes. If there are no further questions, Sal, I can just jump right in and discuss the summary of changes here.
Yeah, please.
The removal of this house does eliminate one of the D variances we were seeking for two principal structures on a lot, but it also eliminates a bulk variance for front yard setback and another bulk variance for buffering between parking and loading areas on site and that existing dwelling. We're also proposing to close off this secondary driveway, and the applicant does have a letter from the fire official stating that that was acceptable and they're okay with us eliminating this driveway. I'm going to go ahead and now flip to a new exhibit we prepared. This is entitled Site Plan Rendering, prepared by my firm. The date on this is February 13th of 2022. That's the date we were originally scheduled, but had to carry to this date just to due to quorum reasons.
Sal, do you want to mark that, or?
Yes,
there-
please.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where we're up to.
Well,
Eileen, do you have the exhibit?
Eileen, do you know? I'm looking at the last exhibit is like B
It would be A20.
820.
Thank you. Okay, Ryan, so could you describe for the board what A20 depicts?
Sure, this is a site plan rendering. This is a colorized version of our site plan sheet, which is sheet 4 of the civil package that we had submitted. And essentially this is, like I said, a colorized version with some landscape features added, some color for presentation purposes, so you can easily see and discern what is on site. The orangish color on the center of your screen is the building, which is to remain. We are also proposing a small expansion to that, which I will highlight. The proposed expansion area, which is the darker orange shade here, is approximately 2,800 square feet in size. And it also includes a plus or minus 1,400 square foot loft space above the existing building. That loft space will be used for storage purposes. We've added a masonry trash enclosure, 10 by 20 feet in size. And the applicant is happy to provide landscaping around the base of that, which was a recommendation within the latest planning review letter we received. So we're happy to add landscaping around the perimeter of that, which should hopefully avoid a design waiver. In lieu of foundation plantings around this building, and because the applicant needs access to the perimeter of the building via roll-up doors, we've added 34 evergreen trees along their southern property boundary here. And what that does is, we understand we're asking for relief for the outdoor storage components. So we wanted to add additional buffering to the south, to the north, and to the west. We have that existing wooded area. To the east along the road, we do have a landscape buffer. We've been coordinating with the board certified tree expert. So we did feel it was appropriate to add additional landscape buffering to the south as well. We've delineated and added the 50-foot residential buffer to the north on the plans. And we can confirm that there is no outdoor storage space proposed within that 50-foot landscape buffer, or the 50-foot residential buffer, I should say. We are redressing the apron of the southerly driveway with asphalt. That was a comment that was brought up by the board last time, so we felt that would be appropriate to redress a portion of that existing driveway with asphalt pavement. We've modified the plans to label and clarify the height of the proposed relocated fence in the front yard. And to clarify, we thought the board had expressed a favorable opinion of the existing chain link fence with the green shade under existing conditions. However, it was suggested in the planning review letter that we change that to PVC, and we're happy to do so. We've modified the driveway site triangle and shifted the location of the improvements in that front yard to ensure that none of them are located within the county's 22-foot wide right-of-way easement. I'll go ahead and zoom in here. There were some questions last time around as to whether or not you can see this dash line that indicates a 22-foot wide easement to Monmouth County because this road is under county jurisdiction. There's a question as to whether or not any of our improvements would be located within that easement. And we did make sure that we are not putting anything there. We've also delineated the extent of the outdoor storage space. It was a little tough to see on the site plan, which is in black and white. So what we did is we added a yellow color to that line. If you could follow my cursor here, this is the approximate limits of the outdoor storage space we're proposing. With the elimination of the residential dwelling up front, that outdoor storage component has expanded slightly since we last were before this board. Now it sits at approximately 110,000 square feet.
Can I just go back to the outdoor storage delineated by the yellow line, because the yellow line delineates a lot of things. So I'm gonna need a little bit more clarity on that.
Sure. Is there anything I can help?
Yeah, I mean, like, it looks like it's the entirety of the area without outside the loading. So like where, when we last left, we wanted a very clear delineation of the outdoor storage. Every spot on site outside loading does not clarify delineating the outdoor storage. So like, are you saying that the entirety of the paved area that's not the loading is outdoor storage? Because that's in the front, which we're not gonna entertain. So like, give me more than like that yellow line. It delineates like the entirety of the developed area of the site, basically.
So to Jen, I think to help clarify, there was a similar proposed outdoor storage space component in the front yard in the original plan as well.
I get it,
just-
and we were not thrilled with that either, so.
No, I understand. Your comment was to help delineate it, so we think we did with some added color just to help show exactly what we're proposing.
And just to
So
clarify,
basically, you're saying every square inch of paved area is outdoor storage?
Is the grass area considered storage as well?
I mean, because it's in the yellow line, so yeah, clearly.
Correct. We're proposing outdoor storage up to the
No.
front yard.
I would say you're gonna have to go back and do better than that. And we had a TRC where we told you specifically that was not gonna be okay. So for you to come back now with that still as it is honestly insulting.
so when we testified in November, Ryan testified that the current outdoor storage area is 69,500 square feet. And the proposal at the time was for 84,700 square feet, a little less than 20,000 square feet of additional area. And then what's evolved that since they eliminated the house and freed up that area, that's how the size increased.
Yeah, but Sal, come on. You're adding all the area, the green area, the lawn area in the front yard setback. That is not, we don't allow outdoor storage in the front yard, period. So like for you guys to come back now after we had a TRC speaking about this specifically and adding all that area is just, I don't even know what to say about it. I honestly, I don't know what to say about it. I would say, Mr. Chairman, I would advocate that we say no, and that no lawn area be included and nothing in the front yard be included, period. Which is what I said at the TRC prior to this hearing.
Ryan, can you, with your cursor, show the area that's currently outdoor storage, just generally, so we have some context?
Yeah, that's a good question, Sal, because I was cross-referencing the originally approved plan. I may actually be able to bring that up if you give me one moment.
That's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. You're here now for this plan. And we have had litigation subsequent to your prior approval that says no outdoor storage in the front, period, end of discussion. So I don't care what was approved previously. You're here now for another approval. The outdoor storage in the front is a non-starter for me, and you're absolutely not gonna store outdoor stuff in the grass area. That's a no.
Okay, so first, I mean, I hear you loud and clear, Jen. I guess the issue is it was never made clear to, you did mention at the hearing that you had this litigation and the outdoor storage was not acceptable, but we were under the impression that at least we can have it where it was previously approved. And I know the board is the one who ultimately make the call, but that was the impression I had from my notes, so.
So was it the impression in your notes that you could allow it in the grass area?
No, I'm not
Okay.
justifying that. That's why I asked Ryan the question I asked him earlier. That's not what my notes say.
I mean, this is like bordering on, like, I don't know how clearer we could be. And the fact that, like, there's absolutely no acknowledgement of what we've said previously is a lot to take, to be honest.
Yeah, Jen, we hear you. I don't know that it was abundantly clear to the applicant at the TRC, but
Really?
All right,
I mean, come on.
second. Ryan?
I am not, never have I ever been known to be subtle. So if you're telling me that I wasn't clear, that's a little bit much to take, because I've never been known to be vague or subtle. So
Well,
I'm telling
yeah.
you right now, no in the front yard and no in the grass area.
So, all right, so Jen, I hear you, and the board members hear you. We all hear you, and we agree with you. So my question is now for Jordan, before we move forward. Jordan, stormwater management impervious surface, right? We're removing the house. It looks like they're putting grassy area in after they're moving the driveway and so forth and putting the plantings in. Is there a restriction on that grassy area, mainly where the driveway was? Is there a restriction on impervious surface? Is that why it's a grassy area?
Well, I would ask Mr. McDermott to confirm, but I'm assuming, as you suggested, they're probably reducing impervious coverage. But from an overall project standpoint, I think from the original application and to this current plan, they wouldn't trigger the major development requirements. So I'm assuming that wasn't a conscious effort on their part as it relates to stormwater management. Again, I'll defer to Mr. McDermott. And especially as the zoning goes, they're well under the impervious coverage. I think they were probably trying to match existing conditions where they could.
That's correct, Jordan. We were just trying to match existing conditions to the best extent that we could. And to your point, with the closing off of the driveway, we are reducing the amount of impervious coverage.
Okay, so then Sal?
Well, you know, it's,
That
guess
yellow line has to come in.
we're gonna have to discuss with the client and consider whether we should proceed or not. I mean, I guess the fact that the consideration he's gonna have to make, and it's not your decision, obviously, for the board members, is that does he keep what he has, keep the house and keep the 69,000 square feet where it is, or come back for some form of relief? That's the decision he's gonna have to make. While we're together though, Jennifer, did you have any comments on the architectural, just in case we come
No,
back?
I have nothing to say on the architecturals. You guys did a good job on the architecturals, so I have no issue with that at all.
Thank you. And then we tried to work with Shari to, in shifting the landscaping, which, and if the board members recall at the last meeting, we showed you a street view of the landscaping, and it was very dense and very attractive, and everyone seemed to like it. So we've attempted to work with Shari to make sure that the new buffer, assuming it's ever installed, will be consistent with that. And obviously, we'll work with her going forward. But Mr. Chair, having said that, and now that we know if the architecturals are good, and I think from an engineering point of view, there really weren't many issues. We just have to make a decision where we want that yellow line to be, and we'll have to come back with that. And if we come,
And then Sal, how much impervious surface? You could add impervious surface if you get rid of some of that grassy area. If you're not busting the stormwater area or the total coverage, and you move the yellow line, and then, you know, et cetera. I mean.
Right, but that, in listening to Jennifer, the front yard would be the area that runs parallel to the front of that
No,
building.
it's just the setback area, Sal. The front yard,
just
when I
this-
say front yard, it's front yard setback.
I'm sorry, that's where the misunderstanding was then, because I thought you were saying front yard
No.
completely. So, okay, setback, okay.
So Jen, if we were to perhaps take this line, straighten it out, that might be a little more.
Well,
palatable.
and then around that grass area on the bottom of the screen too.
Right, and I think to the chairman's point, it might be worth, if we stay under the allowable limits for impervious surfaces and stormwater management, it might be worth shaving a little bit of this off. But then you're
Right, so
correct,
long as you move
working
that-
the yellow
yeah.
line around that.
Yep, as long as you're not in the front yard setback, that's the front yard technically. As long as you stay out of that area. And if you're shaving that grass area, which we're talking about, to the lower part of the screen. And you're still good with Jordan on the drainage, as long as it's out of the front yard setback, that's fine, but we're not gonna allow you to go into the setback with the storage, no.
Mr. McDermott, can I ask you a question really as it relates to the limit of the outdoor storage, more so in the rear yard?
Sure.
At the first hearing, it was discussed that I think beyond a wetlands LOI, you didn't really need anything from the DEP, but it looks like now, you know, your building is pushing into that buffer area. Can you just kind of walk the board through any permits you're currently seeking, or maybe have received? You know, is the DEP requiring any delineation of the storage area more so in the rear yard as it's
Certainly,
relates to them?
certainly, it's a good question, Jordan. The last time we were here, we were not contemplating any addition or expansion to the existing building footprint. So it was pretty simple, cut and dry. As long as we had a letter of interpretation from the DEP, which we do have for this property, then there was no further permits required because we weren't doing any work within that transition area, AKA buffer area. Now, as you can notice, I'll zoom in here. If you follow my cursor, there is a small portion of the addition, which is in this hatched area, which is the wetlands buffer area.
And also right where your mouse is, there is, on the architecturals, there was doors too, suggesting there would be activity back there.
Correct. And what that requires is a transition area waiver and buffer averaging permit from the DEP. Essentially, all that means is whatever space you're going to be disturbing within this buffer, you have to compensate for that elsewhere on site. And that is a permit that is pending from NJDEP. It's a relatively straightforward one that's filed regularly.
Okay, so I would just ask that any final wetlands lines with your give and take from the buffer averaging just be reflected on a final plan. So that we can really identify the areas outside of the buffer, you know, that are usable areas for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
Yes,
regarding
Mr. Martin.
landscaping. Could you go down to the landscaping at the bottom there? Because that was a big issue that we were discussing at our November meeting. Are we moving those green giants forward?
We,
'Cause I can't tell by the plan if they're being transplanted or you're putting new plants in there.
You're
We will
correct.
keep-
They are being transplanted, and whatever is unable to make that move, if we keep an eye on them and they end up not making it, then the applicant is going to have to replant those.
Okay,
Right.
and they'll be, I know they're not going to be able to put them in that big new ones, but they're going to put, does it clarify that they're going to be putting in, it's larger is better on this?
12 foot or 12 feet at planting.
Yeah, because I mean, right now it looks really nice with the hedge. I think it looks really good and moving them forward is fine. I just wanted to make sure that they were staying. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Any other members have any other questions?
Mr. Chair, just getting back to what Richard was saying, how far are those trees being moved? Those green giants?
About 30 feet. We're gonna have to look, now that we're going to be moving potentially activity out of the front yard setback, we may or may not move the trees at all. So we're gonna have to revisit that issue.
Okay, so it's like 30 feet. All right.
Yeah, approximately.
It seemed less than that on the drawings. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
It is a bit less than that. It measures out maybe closer to 10 feet. I think the 30-foot shift was with respect to the fencing, and not all of the improvements are going up that far. And really, that point came up last time when we were talking about the 22-foot wide county right-of-way easement. So they're being located as far east as they can without encroaching upon that easement.
It's moving those trees. I would say, I mean, the professional would know obviously better, but there's a good chance you're going to lose some of those. And you're not going to be able to find ones the same height. I doubt it.
My client did hire a landscape company who I believe communicated with Shari. So if we're going to continue down that route, we'll make sure that Shari's completely satisfied with that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
I believe on the meeting of the 28th, when I reviewed the footage of that, there was some fencing on the outdoor storage area and some gates. Is that being totally eliminated now?
The gates, yes, there's an opening. Sorry, I lost my mouse. There's an opening right here. So there is still fencing proposed. It's kind of tough to see because it's overlaid with the yellow limit of the outdoor storage. But there is fencing that still follows that perimeter, and it ends right here.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Okay, I do have a question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
All right, so traffic coming in, it goes to it's going to be coming in and to the right of the trash enclosure and then into the loading dock areas?
If they're coming in to load up in the building, yes, that's correct. And there is no fence here. So they'll be able to pass through this where there's no fencing, no gate. And again, this is just a delineation line, this one here. So they'll be able to pass through this area freely. And these loading spaces are shown for graphical purposes only. He's really not getting trucks that large to this site. So, this is kind of a free-flowing area with loading spaces delineated for graphical purposes.
I was going to ask that. What is the biggest truck thinks he's going to get?
Usually some sort of box truck, an SU-30.
Okay, so I think I saw somewhere on the traffic dynamic traffic report that it could accommodate a 53-foot trailer with truck, which is like, those could be 70 to 80 feet.
It can accommodate the bigger trucks.
So, okay. I know those are only for delineation, the lines. But if we had a 70-foot truck on those westernmost bays, how much room does that leave to that fence?
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to, we kept our vehicle circulation plan, which is the last sheet of the set, to an SU-30 for really to show what this is intended to facilitate turning maneuvers on. You're not going to be able to get a WB-67 back there, and that's not how it's intended. We're really just showing that 60-foot length because that's what the ordinance requires for the length of a loading stall.
All right, so we're not going to be bringing in a 53-foot trail.
No, sir, not back in that area. They would not be able to fit.
No, I know, definitely not. And it'd be probably way too close to that fence where you wouldn't have a 30-foot aisle.
He'd be doing about 600 K turns, and I don't think anybody wants.
Yeah, they won't be doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I don't know if it could be put into like, what size vehicles can actually be brought into the development, into the property.
We would certainly stipulate that the size of the vehicles be limited to the SU-30. There's no intention of anything larger going to this site. The space is very small too. It's not a very large building.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm favoring.
Yeah, it's a drive-in, as opposed to the 4-foot loading docks that you would typically see with the larger tractor trailers.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, if there are no other questions, we're going to ask that we have a new meeting date, and we're going to reconvene and hopefully resubmit.
Sal, before you go there, can we just show where the front yard setback is on this exhibit?
Sure, it's this dashed line here, and it continues all the way up here.
And that's the area, Jen, you're speaking of, that where the parking's not allowed?
Yeah, it's a black hash
Storage, I
line,
mean.
so I don't want to see it in the grass closer to the street
Yeah.
like beyond the front yard setback line. So you see the difference between the black hash line and the yellow
Yeah.
line? Yeah, no.
So if the yellow line was moved to the black line,
Yes.
that would, and Sal, that you need to revisit that point?
Yes.
Okay.
And Ryan, I'm sure you would do this anyway, but can you just put a calculation on your plan showing the change in impervious coverage from existing conditions to proposed conditions to see if we're increasing or decreasing?
Yes.
Now, are you going to have any edging or curving along that new line that the setback's going to be now once we move it? So there isn't going to be any way a truck can start pulling onto the grass?
That's a good question. Previously, it was not contemplated because we were leaving the existing edge of pavement out there. And further, before I say yes wholeheartedly, I think that we want to review existing drainage patterns. My gut reaction is the entirety of this site, and I think it came up briefly last time, drains towards the west portion of the lot where the wetlands are located. So in order to not interfere with those drainage patterns, we might want to leave it as existing edge of pavement, even if we are bringing that grass area closer.
Okay, well, I'll refer to Jennifer on that or whoever.
Well, Rich, they could always stripe it too.
Yeah, I know they could stripe it. I just know that, if you have grass someplace and you're trying to store something, you may go over the line. I'm not,
If there's vehicles stored there or it's being used as like a parking area, it's going to be considered impervious.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question for Jen.
Go ahead.
The masonry trash enclosure where it is now,
Yes.
that's considered like the front of the property, right? Shouldn't it be?
Yeah,
in the
it's not ideal. I would say it's not the ideal location, given outdoor storage and all that stuff. So I would ask you to like take a look at maybe relocating that somewhere else, because you're
Plus
like
the truck's working around it.
yeah, it's right in the middle of everything. So if you're coming back with a revised plan, I would look at, I appreciate the masonry because that's an issue for us, but it needs to be located someplace a little bit more appropriate.
Okay, we'll work with the applicant.
Yeah, the waiver that was required is for both buffering around it and also in the front yard. So
Yeah, like
right off the bat, they said they would comply with the buffering, and then the front yard portion still remains.
but I mean, if you're gonna, if that grass area, Jordan, is gonna be, turned into pavement in some form, and there's gonna be storage there, it's like in the middle of, it's like an island in the middle of everywhere. So I would say you need to relook at the location of it.
Okay, we'll look at that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I do have something else. I'm sorry if I'm holding anybody up.
No, go ahead.
I know we're gonna be having another meeting, so maybe we can just discuss it then. But when I reviewed the November hearing, the questions came up about the vehicle storage of winterization. And, what type of vehicles, are they registered, are they licensed? Is that something we're gonna be discussing next time around? Or something we should talk about now?
I would say it's probably next time because we're gonna look at like where they're actually gonna store the stuff. So I would put a pin in that. I think it's a great question, but I would put a pin in it until next time.
All right.
Okay,
Mr. Chair,
yes,
do we know how many tenants are proposed to be in this building?
Sal?
Yes. There'll be 5 or 6, but the applicant is going to be one of them. The others could, depending on how large of the space, it could be up to 5 or 6.
My only reason for the question is a growing issue throughout town is with warehouses or complexes with multiple tenants. It seems that maybe it's something that's not in our ordinance, but we fail to kind of anticipate how much garbage is being generated from so many different tenants that a single trash enclosure is just not sufficient enough, which creates property maintenance issues around commercial properties. I don't know if there's a better way to look at how much garbage or how many enclosures are needed to service that many different tenants, or if they're going to be what the anticipated garbage production is for each tenant, without knowing what each business particularly is or does in the warehouse space.
John, good question. So, Sal?
Yes, well, we know of 2 of the users because they're already on site, but we'll look at that more carefully before the next meeting, certainly.
Thanks.
Got it. Also the, Sal, you compensate for it by daily pickup versus every other day or twice a week, however you're gonna handle.
We could control the frequency of pickups, but we'll look at that and determine whether we need more space or more frequent pickups, or both.
All right, great, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, as we're on the subject of tenants, is that still only 5 parking spaces? Is that all we have for this development?
Those are 5 spaces delineated. You could fit much more than that, and we'd be happy to delineate more, but I think that's what the ordinance required. So we had just delineated at 5.
Does the applicant know how many employees these tenants have? Or might have?
It's only the 2 that are on site. We haven't identified the other tenants yet, but yes. And he testified at the last hearing that the applicant's business, which is Porter Johnson and dumpsters, he has 2 employees on site.
And
Okay, I just wanted to make sure there was enough.
Parking requirement, though, our parking requirement is based on square footage, so it's not based on tenancy. So I understand your concern, but the required parking is based on the overall square footage.
Okay.
Okay. Eileen?
Yes.
Mr. Alfieri is going to want to carry this application.
I have May 8th with one other applicant on, or I have June 12th.
I'm sure we would prefer May 8th, but I'm waiting to see if anyone on our team has an issue. May 8th.
Good here, Sal.
Yeah, May 8th, please.
Sure, and can I have an extension because the one now expires April 30th?
Yeah.
Yes, I'll extension through the end of June, end of May, if that's good.
That's fine.
Do you need a letter followed up, Eileen?
Yes, please. And will you be renoticing or with no notice?
Depending on how extensive these changes are, if you'd announce that we're not renoticing, and if we decide we need to, we will, please.
Okay, sure.
Okay, Eileen, so case number BA 08-24A, Rod Zarelli. This application is being carried to be heard on May 8th with an extension of time to May 31st with no further notice.
Thank
Sal?
you, everyone. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Sal, you know, we'll get it, we'll get it right this time, huh?
I know, yes, this is it. No more.
All right, thanks.
Good night, Sal.
Night.
Bye. Bye, guys. Thanks.
Okay. Billy, I'm looking at you. So, next up on the agenda is case number BA 22-15, which is ZS Mill I LLC. This is a use variance and amended preliminary and final major site plan with bulk variances. The description, application ZS Mill LLC as applicant and owner seeking use variance and amended preliminary and final major site plan with bulk variance approval on premises known as blocks 25, lots 5403, 5406, and 54.10, US Highway 9 North and Blaines Mill Road to remove previously approved but not yet constructed retail buildings and to construct 2 professional and medical office buildings identified as B2 and D1 on the proposed site plans, along with the associated site improvements. 2 wall facade type signs are proposed on each building. Variance relief is required as the 2 signs per building will exceed the maximum of 1 with wall facade sign permitted per business located within the shopping center in the zone. In addition, 1 monument sign is also proposed for building B2. Expiration date, June 14th, 2023. Mr. Conliffe, welcome back. We need to swear you in?
Good point, Mr. Chairman. Where's Charlie? Oh, there he is. Do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name for the record.
Charles Conliffe.
Our board engineer is sworn, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Bear, I believe we have Mr. Sarto as the representative attorney?
Yes, correct, Paul.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm gonna have to recuse myself. We were noticed, we are a neighboring property of, the applicant.
Mr. Bear?
That would be a, this, yes. If Mr. Stanton's property or his family's property is within 200 feet, he should recuse, so.
It is.
All right, Billy, you're done for the night then. You can stay as a visitor.
I'll
if you'd
stay on
like.
as an attendee.
Yes. That still gives us 7 board members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
John Sardo on behalf of the applicant from the law firm Giordano, Halloran and Cecila. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm just making sure. Yep, okay.
Can't see you, but can hear you.
Yeah, I'll try to move a little closer here. You know, we wanted to be together in a meeting here, so the team is behind me and they'll come up to the podium here and speak. So apologize if it's a little tough to see us.
Can you drop down and zoom the camera just a little bit?
I can try.
Looks like you have a big room there, John.
Yeah, no, extreme close up. I apologize. And I usually don't use this. No, I'm not able to manipulate the camera. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
So, correct, we're here on the amended application. And, you know, I have the first, just a matter of housekeeping. You had mentioned we have a D variance for height. We are exactly at 10% over on these buildings, which, we're at 49.5 feet, where 45 feet is permitted. At the outset, I just want to mention that we are proposing to reduce that by at least an inch, so that it's a C variance only for this application. And with that said, I would just get started. If it pleasures the board, we can call our civil engineer.
Well, Mr. Sardo, I want to take a deep breath here because, Greenleaf Plaza, it's been around a while. I was originally, remember on the master plan when that came up many years ago. And, what was proposed there that, we're changing? I'm curious.
So there's I think it's 6 retail buildings were there in these in the same general location as these proposed office buildings. And the client and applicant is proposing to remove a total of 6 buildings and in their place put 2 office buildings. So really it's a change of those buildings and the use within those buildings in the shopping center.
Great, thank you. Okay, Mr. Sardo, then please, bring your professionals up and let's get them sworn in.
And sure, and would you like to do that all at once or one at a time?
All at once would work, sir.
Okay, I will then ask. You want to just go ahead and identify yourself?
Yes, hi, Jason Bernayko, professional engineer with New Lines Engineering and Survey.
Is that it, John, or is there anyone else?
No, we have
Hi,
two more here.
Good evening, Melissa Mermelstein with BF Design Architects.
Can you spell your name?
Sure. Melissa, Melissa, Mermelstein, Mermelstein.
And Scott Kennel, Kennel with McDonough and Ray Associates, traffic expert.
We also have a planner who I don't see logged in yet. We could try to get him sworn in later if we make it to him, okay?
So I'm just gonna go by first name so we can get to the last.
John,
this
he's
week.
in the waiting room.
Osceola?
His hand is up. Jason
Okay.
Osceola, his hand
Yes.
is up in the waiting room, waiting to come in. Or
Oh,
Joseph
perfect.
Osceola.
Perfect, thank you, Jen.
Hi, Justin Auciello, AUCIELLO, professional planner, the phone consulting group.
Okay, so can the professionals in Mr. Sardo's conference room, along with Mr. Osceola, raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And then can you, starting in John's office, just state your name and spell your last for the record?
Jason Bernayko, that's BURNEYKO, professional engineer.
Melissa Mermelstein, MERMELSTEIN, registered architect.
Scott Kennel, KENNEL.
Okay.
And Justin Auciello, AUCIELLO.
Mr. Sardo and Mr. Chairman, you have sworn professionals.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Sardo, it's all yours.
Thank you. Our first witness is our engineer, Jason Bernayko. Jason, would you give the board your credentials so we can get you sworn as?
Yes, I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I'm employed by New Lines Engineering and Survey in Lakewood, New Jersey. I've been a professional engineer for 17 years, testified before several townships throughout Ocean and Monmouth County, including this Howell Township Zoning Board for previous site plan applications involving this Greenleaf at Howell project.
Oh, Jason, what school did you go to?
NJIT.
Got it. Okay, we accept you, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Jason, can you explain if you prepared any exhibits for tonight's hearing?
Yes, we have prepared 3 color site renderings, which have been submitted to the board secretary. The first rendering is a color rendering showing the overall previously approved plan. The second rendering is showing the overall amended site plan. And a third rendering shows the proposed landscape plans for the 2 proposed buildings.
And these were marked on the, I guess, the pre-marked exhibit list as A17, A18, and A19. And will you be able to share the screen, or would you like us to pull that up?
I would recommend, John, that you guys do it, only because if the witness wants to show, like, move around or work with the exhibit at all, that would be better from your end, but.
Okay, perfect. We can do that. Wait, no, bring that.
The first one is 17, which is
Prior one?
the prior plan, yes.
Are we sharing? Can you see that or? Andy?
Not
I don't-
shown. Nope,
I don't see anything.
nope.
Okay. Is that better?
That's
That
Mr.
works.
Sarbo's screen. It's better.
There's an exhibit there, John.
Okay. And you can zoom if you like.
Let me just get my bearings here. Figure out how to zoom in.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think this goes to your first question about what was there and what are we doing, and the 2 colorized areas here are the areas of activity, and you're looking at the previously approved layouts, which Jason's about to walk through.
Yeah, so this exhibit represents the existing conditions, or the previously approved site plan for Greenleaf at Howell. As you can see, everyone's familiar with the site, the BJ's, the climb zone, the movie theater up to the north of the site. Towards the center, we have the LA Fitness. This is a future retail building H, a future retail building I. And then closer to Route 9, which is on the left side of the plan, we have the Texas Roadhouse restaurant up in the corner here. With the adjacent retail strip center building F, and there's an existing Starbucks down here right at the entrance to Route 9. So just to touch on the existing conditions briefly, there is frontage along Lanes Mill Road and Route 9. There's a full egress entrance and exit located along Lanes Mill Road, which is controlled by a traffic signal. And the other main entrance to the site is off of Route 9, which is full access in and out with a deceleration and acceleration lane. There's also a means of egress right in front of the Texas Roadhouse building restaurant onto Route 9. And there is a separate entrance for trucks and deliveries behind the movie theater off of Lanes Mill Road. And we're not proposing to change any of these entrances or means of egress or ingress to the site. We're simply going from the approved plan here, which showed right now there's just there's a vacant space between the climb zone building and the movie theater. That was originally approved with 3 retail buildings, as Mr. Sardo pointed out earlier. There was a building B2, a building B3, and a building B4. So those are 3 retail buildings that were proposed. And over here by building D, there were also 3 retail buildings, a D1, a building D2, and a building D3. This plan represents the previously approved conditions, and we colored in the areas that we are looking to make modifications to, so that we don't need to focus so much on the rest of the shopping center. We can focus on these colored areas which represent the amendments that are about to be made. I'm going to switch to the amended site plan exhibit, which will show the differences between the originally approved plan and our proposed amended plan.
So we're switching out to what's marked A18. And if you go to the folder.
Do that stop sharing, or do I?
Just go to the folder. And then, right there. Right there.
Color and.
And just X out on them. X the top.
I'm gonna keep it in case we need to go back to it.
On top, there's one.
Yeah, the top.
Okay. There we go. Okay, so this represents it's a similar plan, but this will show the proposed amendments that the applicant is looking to make. If you recall from the previous exhibit. I'm having a tough time. Yeah. I'm sorry for the delay in scrolling through this exhibit. So with the amendments that the applicant is looking to make, if you recall from the previous plan, there were 3 retail buildings occupying this entire open space between the movie theater and the climb zone building. This proposed amendment is going to replace those 3 retail buildings with 1 professional / medical office building. This building will be 3 stories high. And because of the smaller footprint associated with this building, we were able to provide some additional parking area between the climb zone and the movie theaters. And we were also able to increase the amount of grass coverage or pervious coverage within this area. This was previously all going to be impervious area, and we're now introducing some nice areas of landscaping and grassy areas within this overall footprint. I'm going to swing over to building D, and in a similar fashion, there was previously approved 3 retail buildings throughout this area. We have again proposed an amendment for a 3-story medical / professional office building. 3 stories, and due to the smaller footprint size, we are able to provide some additional parking down here to the south of the proposed building, which again increases our grass / pervious area. In total, we are actually reducing the impervious square footage by 24,000 square feet, or that's just over half an acre. So there's an additional half acre of grass areas associated with these amendments. We've provided ample parking for the sites. There are a total of 1,882 parking spaces provided throughout the entirety of the shopping center. Based on our calculations using the previously approved plans, and adding in a new requirement for professional office, because we didn't lump it in with the shopping center, the professional office use requires parking at a rate of 1 space per 300 square feet. So totaling in this, the square footage for office space requires 1,725 parking spaces for the entire shopping center. We are providing 1,882 parking spaces. So that's an excess of approximately 160 parking spaces. due to this increase in parking and the excess amount of parking that we have, we went through and back calculated the amount of square footage in these office buildings that could be dedicated to medical use. Medical use has a more stringent parking requirement of 1 space per 150 square feet. So out of the proposed square footage that we are proposing for the amended plans, we've determined that 44,000 square feet of this new office space could be classified as medical
So just to
office space.
clarify what the import of that is we don't have tenants yet. What this would enable us to do if the board would act favorably on this is, as we're getting tenants, we could go up to 44,000 square feet of medical and maintain this parking ratio with this many parking spaces. Alternatively, it could end up being all professional and we would still easily comply with parking.
And there'll be further testimony by our traffic consultant regarding the parking calculations. But that was meant to provide a maximum limitation if they seek any medical office use. The 44,000 would be the maximum that the parking space count could accommodate.
Jason, can you point out, there's 2 monument signs that we're proposing as well, and they're up right now on the screen, so
yes,
we can point out their location.
So in front of the proposed building, which we call D1, we are proposing a monument sign at the right off the entrance to Route 9 as you come into the site. We have a monument sign proposed just to allow any users of the shopping center to, navigate through the large shopping center and understand where these office buildings are. The sign would be in conformance with the size regulations. But it's my understanding that this creates a variance because there are already monument signs associated with the overall shopping center. There's a sign out on Route 9, a large ground sign, and there's 2 signs at the entrance off of Lanes Mill Road, which are basically directory signs for the shopping center. So we're seeking a variance for the additional 2 monument signs, which we feel are beneficial to the overall circulation throughout the site. So this represents a sign location for building D1, and over at building B2, we have another sign right over here at the front of this of the entrance to the
So
to
that's
this localized parking lot.
that's
for
if you're
building
coming
B2.
off Route 9 and you drive straight in.
Yes, if you're coming in off of Route 9, this Route 9 corridor entrance. Bear with me as the computer catches up to me. Yeah, so you'd have your entrance off of Route 9, you would see this sign here for building D1, and you would continue to the east and you would see the sign here at the end of this connection drive aisle off of Route 9.
So there was a question in the review letter about if we knew the proposed hours of operation. As I mentioned, we don't yet have tenants, but we would anticipate that would be generally in 7 a.m. to perhaps 9 p.m. would be what would be expected hours of operation. And as with respect to
That's Monday through Friday, 7 to 9.
no, it's tenant driven, I think. With the medical, it'd be weekends as well.
Till 9 p.m. on a Sunday night.
No, that's probably doubtful.
Right, that's why I'm asking.
Well, it's hard to, I'm answering it in the absence of having a tenant.
I understand, but that's kind of what we're asking, is you to create some limitations so that we understand what we're dealing with.
Understood.
So I would suggest perhaps 7 to 9 Monday through Friday, and maybe, 8 to 3 or 8 to 5 on Saturday, 8 to 3 on Sunday. I mean, I don't know, a lot of medical offices are even open on Sunday, but like, I understand the need, but what we're not looking for is a late to late operation 7 days a week. So I'm just asking, like, you're here for a use variance, right? But so I you know, and I understand you don't have a tenant, but we're gonna need to have some parameters. If the parameters don't work, you can come back and adjust the hours later, but for now, we're gonna look for some generalization.
That's understood, Jen. I think that the hours work for this. I've just pointed out, we're dropping the request for the use variance, but that's just a parenthetical note to your comment. Yeah, if we needed an operation to come in later, we would come in and ask to amend the condition.
All right, but I need a little bit more than 7 to 9, because 7 to 9, 7 days a week is a different situation than 7 to 9, 5 days a week, and something a little different on the weekends. So what, like, I'm gonna need a little bit more.
Okay. 5 p.m. Saturday and 3 p.m. Sunday.
Perfect. 7 a.m. start time though, yeah?
Jen, 6 a.m.
What?
6 a.m.
We'll
6 a.m.?
we'll gladly expand the hours.
They said 7.
I know, but if it's medical, you know, people start early in the
Well,
morning.
that's fine. So 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. 6 to 5 on Saturday and 6 to 3 on Sunday.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So we're just going to jump in and transition, I guess, to identifying the variances and design waivers we're requesting. Jason, unless you have anything else to point out before we move to that.
Yeah, we can identify the variances and waivers now, and I still want to introduce one more exhibit for the landscaping and just speak on some engineering items, but the variances and design waivers that are requested or required, the maximum building height, which was previously discussed, that the height was 49.5 feet, which was at 10% of the building height. We now stated that we would comply with we'd get that down to less than 10% of the 45-foot building height. So we would make the required adjustments to lower the building height so that the D variance is not needed for the building height.
But still needing a variance though, right?
Correct.
Still needing a variance, yeah.
That was,
Okay.
there was a point of clarification prior to the hearing, and this being clarified how the ordinance operates for us. And everything over 45 feet that we're proposing is all parapet, and the intention is for screening and such, but we need a variance for all of that, everything over 45 feet. And yeah, we could talk about that more as we're showing the elevations as well, like how that works and where that is along the facades.
Do we know the number, like what the height is?
Oh, that we're proposing
49.5 feet.
We're at 49.5. We're down to 49 to get rid of the D.
49.0.
0.0.
Okay, so it's still a C variance, but not a D variance.
Correct.
Is
Okay,
the height limitation, Jen, in the zone 40 or 45?
45.
Yeah, Andy, if you're looking at the review letter, I think it's misstated in one of the earlier in the engineer.
Right. Okay, that's why I asked. Thank you.
It's 45 feet. So 49 would be a C variance, yes.
Okay. There were other variances required for site signage. I had indicated the 2 proposed ground signs. Because this is part of a shopping center and not a standalone business outside of a shopping center, the 2 proposed ground signs require variances. because we do have the existing ground signs on the street frontages that I indicated earlier. And there are 2 wall signs that are provided on each building, which also is a variance. And we will do, part of our presentation will include the architectural elevations, which can show the facade signs. There were design waivers required for the lighting intensity. The lighting intensity is approximately 2.1 to 2.15 foot candles at its maximum, whereas the average maximum is 0.5 foot candles permitted. The previous approvals for this project had granted design waivers to provide a maximum of 4 foot candles. So we just simply wanted to keep consistent with the existing lighting that's out in the parking lots, and just to provide some additional lighting and keep continuity with the remainder of the site. So we are requesting that design waiver. The light poles are mounted at 32.5 feet, where 24 feet is the maximum allowed. And once again, the 32.5 feet was a previously approved design waiver. So again, for continuity and consistency with the rest of the parking area, we proposed our pole heights at 32.5 feet. The outdoor trash storage area, we're proposing, each building has.
It's on your other exhibit. Is that maybe better to show on the last exhibit?
Yeah, if it's okay, I'm gonna switch to my my 3rd exhibit, which shows these areas at an enlarged scale.
So what's being opened up is marked A19.
And let me zoom in here. So this just focuses more on the amended portions of the site. You can see behind the proposed building D1, there are trash areas proposed. These are the same locations for the trash areas that were on the plans that are partially constructed out there. So we're not changing the location of these. This existing drive aisle is currently in use, so the traffic patterns will remain unchanged for access to these trash enclosure areas. On this building D1, the trash enclosure areas, they are surrounded by a white PVC vinyl fence. And we have landscaping around these trash enclosure areas. However, for the trash enclosure area at building B2, it's a little tough to see here. You can see our proposed trash enclosure area is located between the movie theater and the proposed amended office building. Again, this was a location that was previously approved with the original approval. We are providing white vinyl fence around this enclosure. However, we do not have any landscaping around this particular trash enclosure, and that matches the,
That's what we need a waiver for, right?
That's what a waiver is needed for, is that we don't have landscaping around this trash enclosure. This lane here is a truck delivery lane only. There is no landscaping.
So before we get to landscaping, I'm just gonna jump in on the trash enclosure.
Yeah.
I think the trash enclosure should be masonry. I understand that your prior approval, which you're now amending with this application, allowed for something other than masonry. We, as this board, have consistently required masonry trash enclosures. So I would recommend, regardless of what happened years and years ago, that these trash enclosures be masonry and you landscape around them, regardless of where they're located. That has been our consistent policy. So that is my recommendation. And so I don't recommend the waiver for the landscaping, and I recommend that both of the trash enclosures be masonry, which we have consistently required of every applicant that has come in, whether they're amended, new, regardless. So that's my
All right,
recommendation.
we can comply with that. We'll make the
Okay.
change.
Okay, thank you. And the last design waiver was, there was some additional curbing that was, recommended back, along this truck drive aisle. Our plans showed curbing here, along the back of the building where these parking spaces are. I believe that the, waiver request came from not providing curbing along the remainder of this aisle here. There was no curbing out there existing. Again, that was part of the prior approval, which you just mentioned. It doesn't really matter for the trash enclosure, so I don't see it being a problem that we can provide some additional curbing. If Mr. Cunliffe could just maybe chime in, is this the location that you were looking for additional curbing?
Yes, and the reason
Sure.
that doesn't, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And the reason why that doesn't have curb in the existing condition is because that was supposed to immediately butt the proposed building. So now you're eliminating the building, putting green grass. That's why we recommended there be curbing provided there. So what you have to your parking, just continue it the whole way where, where the drive aisle abuts your new grassed area. So,
okay.
So, and then just a point of clarity, Mr. Chair, I just want to elaborate. So with regards to the site parking, Mr. Bernanko indicated that I believe it was 1,882 parking spaces were proposed throughout the site. Our calculation in our review letter, we indicated that 1,777 parking spaces were provided throughout the site. When the application was originally filed, it didn't include the Texas Roadhouse, which came in for like a technical subdivision years ago and for financing purposes. So we didn't include that in the calculation for the parking. So if you go based off of what was originally approved as part of the entire shopping center, as far as they received a design waiver for 4.5 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet in a shopping center. Their requirement in the zone would have been, with their current proposal, 1,791 parking spaces. The applicant is providing, excluding the Texas Roadhouse, because that's its own finance site, 1,777 parking spaces. So technically they would need a waiver, but I'll just note that doesn't include any credit for EV parking spaces. The applicant's proposing 21 EV parking spaces. They get a 2-for-1 credit for those. So that brings it up to 1778, 1798. So if you went back to the 2009 waiver they got for the entire shopping center, 4.5 per 1,000 square feet, it would be compliant with the parking requirement for the prior waiver they got. Having said that, there has been some changes to the parking requirement after the applicant has filed their application. The change for the parking requirement for movie theaters, I believe, changed. And I believe indoor recreation also changed in what as well. So as part of Mr. Kennel's testimony, we'll want to hear more about like how the uses peak within the shopping center and how it functions as a whole. And then also we'll leave that for Mr. Osceola as part of the planning and the use testimony. So I just wanted to clarify that for the board.
Thank you, Charlie.
Well, can I just ask, is there a use issue anymore?
No.
So John, my question is, if you've eliminated the D6 variance, how does the board have jurisdiction?
The board has had exercised continuing jurisdiction on the 12 applications, most recently through 2020, long after the change in the zoning ordinance for uses was changed. Even the 2017 or 18 resolution goes through it and talks about bifurcation, and the board has the ability to exercise under 76 of MLUL and still applying negative criteria.
So it's
that's-
continuing from the original application in that sense?
Yeah, that goes all the way back
Even
to
though the
2008.
zoning has changed, the zoning that has sent this application to the zoning board initially changed years ago, yeah?
Correct, that's all correct.
Okay.
This same issue was addressed in the 2017 resolution.
Yeah, Jen, it came back for the technical
No,
subdivision.
I
Yeah.
understand. I just think that there's been inconsistent application of that position. So it's just something, you know, maybe, Mr. Chair, we should take a 5-minute break so we can talk about this, like,
Jen,
yeah.
Charlie, Mr. Bear,
Yeah.
Mr. Sarto. We're gonna call for a 10-minute break here. Eileen, can you please announce it?
The board will now take a 10-minute break and reconvene at 8:45 p.m.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Sarto. Don't want to keep you hanging.
Okay.
So during the break, I think we're clarifying that the original statement that I read for a D1 variance is going to remain.
It's D6, Mr. Chairman.
D6 for height
It's a
only.
A D6, okay.
Yeah, so my understanding is that, you know, our position, I amended it verbally tonight to bring it down to a C variance because I was relying on this prior resolution where it discussed the board's continuing jurisdiction. But given the concerns raised tonight about jurisdiction, if we remove the height variance, I've spoke with the applicant. We are agreeable to leaving the height variance as requested in the notice for the D6, which just putting back on the 6 inches that we removed at the outset.
So, Mr. Chair, I know that they have a planner. Mr. Osceola is available to testify. I would submit that 6 inches is de minimis. And so they want to put the 6 inches back on the record. I take no exception, given where it's located. It's in that shopping center. But I would submit that Mr. Osceola is going to provide testimony to that effect. But as far as the overall impact, I want the board to understand that I don't consider that a significant impact.
Got it. I agree, because that's how it was noticed as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. I think we were about wrapped up with our engineering testimony, subject to any questions of the engineer that the board or the professionals might have had.
Well, Jason was up there, right? And you know, and he talked about impervious surface and actually reducing some of the impervious surface that's already there existing. Are we talking impervious surface at both sites or both compounds or whatever you want to call the containment areas?
Mr. Say, I think I can clarify that for the board just to try to make
Please,
it quick.
Charlie.
So this was part of a prior major development. If this was under the old rules, 3 years ago, the applicant wouldn't have had to do any stormwater management. It's under the new rules, there's a new threshold if you're increasing by 1/4 acre of regulated motor vehicle surface. So even though they're decreasing the impervious coverage on the site by almost a 1/2 acre, because they were losing building and creating additional parking, it triggered this regulated motor vehicle threshold, which requires water quality. So they are proposing pervious pavement in their parking stalls to satisfy this requirement. I've worked with Mr. Bernaco's office. I'm satisfied with the design that they have laid out. I did ask that they provide additional soil testing just to confirm infiltration rates. With speaking with Mr. Bernaco earlier today, he indicated that work is already in the process, if not already completed, and will be provided as a condition of any approval. The only outstanding comment I just had was that the applicant provide an O&M manual for that to be recorded by deed, and that the parking stalls don't get paved over with seal coat or anything like that in the future. So they stay pervious pavement.
Got it. Thank you, Charlie. So Mr. Sardo, before we move on, I'm going to ask my fellow board members if any of them have any question for the engineer, Jason.
Mr. Chair, I don't
Yes.
think it was mentioned yet regarding a waiver for foundation plantings. They do have plantings, but it's not around all the sides.
Mr. Sardo?
I can pull up that landscape plan again.
Should be up. Yeah. Now hit share. Yeah.
All right, Sherry, let's do it.
Can you zoom into the building?
Yes. 1 second. So this is building D1. We do have foundation plantings, not around all 4 sides of the building. We provided foundation plantings along this edge of the building. And then this over here, this part of the building that extends out is a 2nd floor overhang. So in speaking with our landscape architect, he didn't feel it was, beneficial or practical to put foundation plantings under this area here because it is covered by the overhang and it wouldn't receive any water or sunlight. I think he may have had a conversation with you, Sherry.
Yeah, I know why they're not there.
Right. And then along here, so we continued the foundation plantings along this eastern side of the building. Around the south, we do not have any on the rear of the building here. So it's the rear of the building and then it's the area underneath this overhang.
And then the other building, you want to pull up?
The other building. Again, we have partial foundation plantings along the front of the building here to the south, along the western edge of the building. This is a grassed area out here. I don't know if that qualifies for plantings on that side of the building or not, or if you actually need it up against the exterior of the building. Same with the back. We did have a grass strip here, but it wasn't, exactly up against the building.
Sharon?
I mean, it is up to you and what you'd like. He is correct. I spoke with the landscape architect because I was hoping to get additional plantings on the first building he pulled up. But yes, he pointed out that there was that overhang. So I agree that that's certainly not possible or feasible to get, plant material there without overhang.
Okay, then Sherry, what about it in the parking areas, the islands there, you're good with all of that?
Yeah, so the last comments, I'm pretty sure he was addressing that I had. So we went through all the comments. I have no issue with the changes that he's going to make to comply.
Okay.
Sherry, the only comment that I would have is the landscaping in those islands, if they could just have a deeper root zone because of the pervious pavement with some of the parking stalls. That's all right, if we can confirm that.
A deeper root zone?
Yeah, so it's just not shallow, nothing like, 6 inches or something like that. I don't know. I don't know if we can regulate that.
About 18 they go.
Yeah, that should be fine. That should be below the stone storage bed.
Not to say they're not in the first,
Yeah.
6 to 10, but I can't tell what they are from here. You know what you have in the center there?
I can pull up my site plan.
I think, Sherry, we could work it as a condition of any approval, just making sure that it's acceptable to yours and my satisfaction.
We're happy to comply
Actually,
with that.
London plane tree, so that should be all right.
I think we did make some of the swaps that were recommended in your
Okay.
review letter. But we'll review.
Okay, yeah, and I'll work
revisit
with
that
Tom.
and we'll work with, yeah.
Okay.
Anything else related to the landscaping?
No, that's all I had.
All right, good. Any of the board members have any question for the engineer? Rich, Nick?
Mr. Chairman, I was just wondering, is the existing drainage, all the drainages here, retention basins, are they already existing? Because I believe they are, but I'm not sure because haven't seen any on any of these plans.
Yes, all the drainage infrastructure is in place. There's a long, narrow behind building B2. Let me see if I can switch my document here. All throughout this area between the privacy fence and this rear truck drive, there is a long, narrow infiltration area that collects runoff from the pavement here and from the various roof leaders that are coming off these buildings. And there was a drainage infrastructure in place because there previously were buildings proposed within this area. So there are stubs to collect the roof area. And since we're actually reducing the amount of roof area, we are actually reducing the impervious area we're actually reducing the amount of drainage that's going to these basins. We have worked with Mr. Cunliffe on this. He had requested that we put some additional measures, as he pointed out, with pervious pavement, and just some calculations with groundwater recharge to show that the existing drainage facilities are capable of handling these amended site plans.
Okay, Charlie, you're good with this?
Yeah, the site's been built for a number of years. All the basins are there and existing. And like I said, if this was 3 years ago, they wouldn't have been required to provide anything additional. It's just that new regulated motor vehicle surface. So we get a little added with the pervious pavement. So I'm satisfied.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Yes, let's talk to us.
the monument signs, the two additional, is it one for B2 and one for D1? So there's gonna be two of them?
Yeah,
That's correct, yes.
Because I must have missed it in the reporting, because I only see it down for building B2.
yeah. I know that's kind of an awkward situation for us because all the other buildings, LA Fitness, Climb and BJ's, and they all are easily identifiable. But when you have professional / medical office space and people are coming in, you want to make sure you delineate the difference between the two locations, right? So, I don't know, I'll defer to Jen on what she thinks, but, I do think it helps with people coming into the site and circulating the site.
I think it helps with like safe circulation, agreed.
Yeah.
If it was only professional office, I don't know that we would need two signs because people that work there are obviously going to know where they're going. But when you have medical office and people coming there, you want to make sure, even in the shopping center, you don't need people misinterpreting where they're supposed to go. So I know Mr. Osceola still has yet to testify, but I don't take exception to what they're asking for.
All right, great. Thanks, Jen. Nicholas, anything else? Sir?
Yeah, and just behind building B2, there's parking spaces. Is that like for employee parking or anybody can park there?
That would be for employee parking.
Okay.
I didn't really get into that in my in the testimony, but again, we tried to. These approvals do go back, and the original approval did have parking in the rear of the building. So we wanted to keep, as consistent as we could with that original approval. And there was parking spaces provided back here. There also are parking spaces behind the movie
And
theater.
respectfully, those were always anticipated to be employee parking,
Right,
so,
right.
Practically speaking, that seems to be
Yes.
what it would be used for anyway.
Yes.
yes, and that was what the anticipated use of those parking spaces would be for.
Makes sense.
Correct. So that they would still be utilized for employees.
That's all for me right now.
Okay, good. Anybody else? Mr. Hughes, Mr. Rebel?
I'm good so far, sir.
Just a real quick question. The basins that have been in place for 3 years, are they below grade under the pavement, underground basins, or are they surface basins?
They are they're above ground surface basins.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess the question, I'm sorry to cut you off. I guess my question is, sometimes when the basins are built in advance of sites and the site lays unstabilized for a long time with all the rainwater and runoff, you get sediment that washes in there and can clog them up. Have they been maintained, or has silt fence was silt fence placed around them before the slopes vegetated and the surrounding ground vegetated?
Yeah, this
Or
is
someone
received.
checked them?
Right, yeah, that would have been checked by the Soil Conservation District. And they would have to issue, this is going back a couple years now, but they would need to issue a report of compliance. So like you said, make sure everything was stabilized, make sure everything was installed correctly, all the vegetation was able to take root and take place. And then they need to sign off before before they release the project for occupancy and for final approval. So yeah, that's going back a couple years, but this was all stabilized. And this area here with this, you can see this chain link fence here. This is the perimeter of the existing stormwater basin that's out there. So it's behind that BJ's, the BJ's store and the gas station over here.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Orozco,
Nope, no question.
Mr. Ryan?
I have no questions right now.
All right, then I guess, Mr. Sardo, we can move forward.
Thank you. Next witness, we're calling our architect, Melissa Merlstein.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Mermelstein. I'm a graduate of the City College of New York Spitzer School of Architecture and a registered architect in the state of New Jersey. I'm a commercial department manager at BF Design, and the architectural sets were prepared under my supervision.
Are you guys hearing us okay?
We're hearing.
Okay.
I'm going to pull up.
Melissa, you're a licensed architect?
That's correct.
Okay, what's New Jersey or New York?
New Jersey.
Okay, and you went to what school?
City College, Spitzer School of Architecture.
Got it. Thank you. All right, we accept you.
Thank you. Good evening. I would like to speak a little bit toward the architectural design of these two proposed professional medical buildings. We designed these buildings to enhance, sorry, go ahead.
Just for the purposes of the record here, what we're looking at right now is the rendering of Site B, which we've submitted, and it's been pre-marked as A15. And as you know from the site plan, Melissa, right, this is at the back of the site.
That's correct.
And the orientation that we're looking at right here, this would be, can you just point out, I guess,
Sure.
which facing the parking lot and which is facing Route 9? And
This side is the side facing Route 9 with the existing parking lot right here in the front left corner. And this is the new proposed parking lot that faces the front entrance of the building right here with this canopy.
perfect, thank you.
So as I was saying, we designed the building to, enhance the overall plaza in terms of color and materials. We are proposing brick and a stucco exterior design with muted earth tones and some vertical articulation on the facade.
Can you point out, so we mentioned that we need a variance for signage. There's 2 wall signs proposed on each building here. I'm gonna ask Melissa to point it out. It's, there's that awning sign and it's generic at this point, but that's the location and the size. And then I believe
This right here,
right on the other corner there.
again, facing the main parking lot as a wayfinding measure.
And then
Jen?
can you just,
Sorry. So,
hold on.
yeah, go ahead.
Were you asking if Ms. Beam something, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's up to you, obviously. It needs to fit in with the architecture of the balance of the shopping center. It's not my fave. But, I feel like they're trying to be consistent with what's in the balance of the shopping center. I mean, if this was a standalone building, I wouldn't be super supportive of it. I don't think it's kind of Howell. I think it's very industrial looking. I think it's institutional looking. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it's in an existing shopping center and they're trying to kind of be consistent with the overall look. Do I think it's 100% consistent? No.
LA Fitness.
I mean, I'm not 100%. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I know. I'm seeing that. And
Yeah,
so-
it's not, I'm not, it looks like a school. It looks like a hospital. It doesn't, it's not, I'm not a fan. And I know they're trying to comply with the overall architectural scheme, but I think that we could do better, to be honest.
We need something a little more vanilla.
Yep. I'm sorry, but it's, no.
Well, I guess asking you now, is there any recommendation in particular at the moment that you?
I mean, I can't off the top of my head give you like what I think. What I think that looks like a high school or a hospital. Like, I mean, I'm happy to work with your professional to come up with a design
Absolutely.
that I think is a little bit more consistent with what we're looking for. I don't think it's an impediment to moving forward. If the board were to act affirmatively, I think it's something we can work through in resolution compliance, but yeah, if you're asking for me to support it as it is, no.
Understood. I think, well, hearing what you've said about working through with us, we're happy to do that.
Yeah, I have no problem doing this, Mr. Chair, if you guys are to act in the affirmative on the application, which I have no exception to that. We can work through this to make it a little bit more consistent with what we're looking for, what we've gotten from other applicants recently.
Okay, and then, of course, I'd like to see what site D looks like right now.
Absolutely. So here is our front rendering of building D. Again, we employed brick at the base with some vertical articulation in these pilaster designs. The window groupings are also in a vertical scheme. We gave some delineation to the entry, with some color variation. And just to respond to the site a little bit, are proposing a second floor overhang over here to follow the curb line. So at the first floor, it's kind of rectangular, and with the second floor, again following the site. The 2 signs that are being requested. One of them is right here over the front entrance. That's the front door. The second one can't be seen in this image, but if I can pull up sky view, it's on this facade. I can pull up.
Which is actually, can you leave that up for a second?
Yeah, sure, sorry.
Yeah, and just, can you point out where that, I guess, where
Right
that
here.
overhang is, just to
Yeah, so
reorient that?
sure,
and
absolutely.
What it is?
So at the first floor, the building is straight. And at the second and third floor, we're proposing this overhang right here.
So you're asking for a variance for for monument signage, right? And then you're asking for a facade sign, which is gonna do nobody any good at all on
Kind
the
of just
outside
an-
frontage.
Right here, just kind of an address sign.
Yeah,
That's fine.
I'm gonna take exception to that one because it's gonna do no one any good. You can't get in there.
Mhm.
And you're gonna have, so you can decide, do you want it on the facade or do you want a monument sign? And I will tell you, this architecture, I'm just gonna be honest, look better in black and white than it does in color. Like, I'm not a fan at all. So, that's something that we're gonna have to work through.
Sure,
significantly
absolutely. The
because
colors,
it looks like it's institutional looking.
yeah, absolutely. The
So-
colors are definitely something that we're open to.
It's not the colors, it's the entire facade. There is gonna be a facade change.
Okay.
It's not,
Understood.
you're not gonna just change the color and it's gonna be all great. That facade looks like a hospital. And that's like, we have taken a lot of time and energy to make this center aesthetically interesting. We beat the crap out of LA Fitness on their facade. Like, you're gonna have to do better than this. So I don't take exception to this being conditioned, Mr. Chair, but I cannot support the waiver for the architecture on this. I mean, they're gonna need a waiver from strict compliance on the architecture, but the way it's designed right now, I would say no.
Okay.
Sure.
So
And I
again,
don't support the additional facade sign. There's no need for it. If you
Yeah,
want a monument sign, that's fine, but you don't need both.
You just
That's
need-
unnecessary and
Correct.
it's,
Correct,
right,
just the front
it's
entrance way and the monument sign, we think is good for circulation,
Exactly.
but we don't need marking it up on that side. Absolutely.
exactly.
so
Yep.
just to be clear, so I'm understanding, and I apologize if I'm slow on the uptake. You're okay, Jen, with the one sign on the wall just to show
No,
the
I'm
building?
I'm okay with the sign on the front,
Yes,
but the sign on the side is a non-starter. That's a variance
so-
that, yeah.
so will be one sign per building.
The one that's over the doors, I think, is perfectly fine, but if
Okay.
you're gonna have the monument sign, which I'm perfectly fine with for traffic safety, but the additional wall signage is unnecessary.
That's fine. We understand. We hear the comment. One sign on each wall of the building will remove that. In addition to meeting, conferring with you and doing the whole facade revision.
Okay,
Sorry.
It's okay. As far as the architecture, I don't know that we have anything more than what we've shown right now, unless there's any other questions.
Well, I think Jen said it all, and unless any board members have any objection, we all support Jen. And we all feel pretty much the same way. It's got to be aesthetically pleasing. It's got to fit into the confines of the Greenleaf area. And we work very hard to make sure we don't have any sore thumbs sticking out in Howell Township. So, if you work with Jen
Absolutely.
that would be great. Thank you.
So,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, how is this looking from Route 9 on the western side? I guess that would be Building D.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You
and
have a
that-
side view?
that is the
That's
Yeah.
the west elevation.
Okay,
Um,
well, maybe this is
well-
not for the architectural, but does anybody know if that's visible from Route 9, the western side of it? Is there enough
There's,
buffer?
right here is,
yes, it is.
Okay,
Well, well, you probably can see it because there's no development kind of intervening. It's not like right on the highway, but you definitely can see it, yeah.
okay. So I mean, it's not in a prime spot from the highway, but again, I concur with everything that our planner said about, trying to get this thing looking a little bit more presentable, because I agree, it does look like a school. And I think we need to certainly address that. That's all I have.
sure.
Okay, comment understood, and we will address all of the elevations. There any other board members, Mr. Chair, that have questions or?
Well, Mr. Sardo, I'm just thinking, I don't know if you're familiar with the Aldrich Road into the over in Jackson, where it goes into the Meridian over by Cook's Bridge. That facility, they put it up. There was a lot of opposition, but it fits right into the community. It's soft on the eyes, and it's got tremendous services that come out of there. So that's all I'm thinking. So
Okay.
I implore you to just work with our planner and see what we can do to make it right. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, and open to all reference points and recommendations.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Sardo, I think we can, does any of the board members have any comments or questions for the architect? Okay, not hearing any. Mr. Sardo, we can move on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness, Scott Kennel, our traffic engineer. Traffic expert here from McDonough Ray.
Good evening, Scott Kennel with McDonough Ray Associates, located at 1431 Lakewood Road, Manasquan. I've appeared before this board as well as the planning board on a number of applications. I have over 35 years of traffic and transportation planning experience. I'm a principal with McDonough Ray Associates, having prepared over 2,000 traffic impact studies and testified on over 1,000 applications in over 100 municipalities. I've also been qualified by New Jersey Superior Court on 4 land use matters as a traffic expert.
Okay, we accept your credentials, Scott.
Thank you.
So Scott, before you present anything here,
yes,
relative to this site, the gas station, the gas pumps, people come in off of Route 9, make that right turn, and they're gunning for, to get in line when others are coming in from the other end. So it's pretty interesting, dynamic on this site when there's a drop in gas price and everyone's trying to fill up. So I'm just throwing that out there. People do move through the site pretty quickly at times. Over.
I'm very familiar. I've been involved in this project since 2005. So I've seen how it's evolved and the various stages of development. So, and I've been out there many times. So Chairman, I'm very familiar with the site, and at times that the gas area there has a significant attraction. Sure.
Yes. So we look forward to your testimony.
Okay. Basically, my office prepared a traffic statement, last revision date, November 8, 2022. And it really focuses on the change in use and the traffic generation. And then there's extensive discussion on parking. But as was testified earlier, we're basically modifying or eliminating 2 retail buildings or a number of retail buildings with over 96,000 square feet of space. And then we're proposing 2 3-story buildings that will yield approximately 116,000 square feet of office professional space, or a net increase of 19,000 square feet. Taking that into consideration, I reviewed the traffic study that was the basis for the NJDOT approval, and that was a smaller development, about 330,000 square feet. But that's basically the threshold or the benchmark when I'm looking at traffic generation as it relates to how the site is constituted now with the various uses. And our analysis indicated that during the morning peak hour, we'd have an increase of approximately 27 trips. During the PM peak hour, we determined that it'd be approximately 97 additional trips. And on Saturday, it'd be a reduction in trips because we have now this office component, which typically has a lower traffic generation on Saturday of approximately 64 trips. And consistent with what was recommended by Mr. Cunliffe, we will file a New Jersey Department letter of no interest. It's my opinion that the access as has been presented and has been constructed will be more than adequate to accommodate the slight increase in traffic in building area and traffic generation that we've estimated. As it relates to parking, as Mr. Bernayko testified, we're proposing 1,882 parking spaces. In the T&M letter, there was an extensive review of parking calculations. And I guess I'll refer to table 1 in the T&M report dated February 14, 2023, and specifically page 8, where it was calculated that if we use the 5.5 parking rate for shopping center retail, 1,917 parking spaces would be required. And then it went further in that letter that if there were adjustments made for the current parking requirements for the movie theater and indoor recreation, that 2,072 parking spaces would be required. So when you compare that to the proposed parking supply, we're short 190 parking spaces, or approximately 10%. It is my opinion that because of the diversity of uses within the site, the distribution of parking and how well it's laid out, that this development can continue to operate without any issues with parking, that there's more than adequate parking, and that because of the different types of uses which have non-coincidental peak periods, that the 1,882 parking spaces is more than adequate to support the center as a whole and individual uses because of how the parking is distributed throughout the site. So that basically sums up our conclusions in the November 8, 2022 report. I'm available for questions, and if Mr. Cunliffe has any further questions, I'm here to address them.
Thank you, Scott. Charlie?
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, just to clarify with that, so that 2,072 parking spaces, in October of 2022, the township adopted revised parking requirements for all the uses within the town. So this application was filed before that. So it's not subject to those because it's time of application. I just put it in my letter for a reference that the board should be aware that there was a higher standard that was adopted. So my first calculation was in accordance with the requirements prior to that ordinance, which was 1,917 parking spaces. And then I also noted in my letter, if you go back to what this shopping center as a whole was previously granted a waiver for, given the varied uses throughout the site, they were granted a waiver for a requirement of 4.5 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet for the shopping center requirement. So if you went based off of that prior waiver and this board decided to grant the extension of that waiver, they would comply with the parking. I'll note, there's varied uses in there. I think there's an LA Fitness gym in there, which would tend to be, I think, off peak from maybe an office use. Your peaks for the LA Fitness might be early in the morning, later in the evening, whereas the office is going to be in the, from 8 to 5 kind of thing. So there's some shared parking with that. Also with your climb zone, that's, unless it's the middle of the summer, I would think that that's going to be something that's going to be later in the evening or a weekend peak driver of parking requirement, which would be like off peak from your office. So I think when the board originally considered this application, they considered the varied mix of uses and how the site functioned as a whole. So I don't necessarily take issue with what's being proposed, especially as they're permitted uses in the zone. One comment I did have, Mr. Kennel did note, obviously, they're gonna get the letter of no interest from DOT because they're under 100 trips to the Route 9 entrance. I did have a comment about the Lanes Mill and the increase in right turns coming out of that driveway going towards Lanes Mill and Maxim Southern Road. I asked Mr. Kennel to provide, some testimony regarding how many trips are adding with the office use to that right-hand turn compared to that intersection as a whole. I think our circulation element has identified that as being like a high traffic and high maybe accident rate intersection. So, ask the question going along the lines of the applicant making a prorated share of any intersection improvements in the future. Having said that, I will note that the township did just pave Lanes Mill Road and Maxim Southern Road and did some restriping, curbing and things around that. So I don't know that anything is coming in the near future, but I think, that should be made a condition of the approval. But I'll ask Mr. Kennel to kind of give some context on what percentage of the traffic is actually going to that intersection as a whole.
Okay, Charlie, thank you. Charlie, I do have a question for you.
Okay.
So let's say building D becomes 100% occupied as a medical facility. With the latest and greatest technologies these days, it's a one-stop shop for a lot of, diagnostics that takes place. Would we run into a problem with that, with regards to parking and so forth?
So I believe the applicant's traffic statement did their calculation based off of a maximum 44,000 square feet of medical office combined in the two buildings. So any approval by the board, I would say, would have to also carry that condition. So and I don't have the total number of square footage for both buildings, but and it's up to them how they want to split it. But I would say maximum total between the two buildings of 44,000 square feet. And whether they decide to put it all in D1, or all in B2, I think I'll let Mr. Kennel talk about it, but there is pedestrian sidewalks around both of these buildings with ADA crosswalks to the shared parking for the rest of the facility. So I think connectivity isn't necessarily an issue, but I think limiting them to that overall 44,000 square feet it would be prudent.
Okay, Charlie, thank you.
As it relates to the distribution between medical office and professional office, the applicant is willing to agree to that, 44,000 square feet of medical office as was presented on the plans and in the, our traffic statement. As it relates to traffic oriented east on Lanes Mill Road, my office conducted recent traffic counts at the site driveways to determine what the percentage of traffic oriented to the east. In our original traffic study going back to 2009, we had projected 20.5% of the site traffic. As a result of our traffic counts, we were slightly off. There's 21% of the site traffic is oriented to and from the east along Lanes Mill Road. And with the change in use, it results in approximately 18 to 20 additional trips oriented to and from that intersection. And as was identified in Charlie's letter, the applicant is agreeable to a pro rata share should there be any future improvements that we would, drill down and further discuss with, I guess, the board professionals should that situation occur.
Yes, and just to clarify, Mr. Chair, so it's what they're adding net. So it's not whatever going back to the additional approval, because that was considered at the time in 2009. It's just the net of what they're adding from that driveway, Lanes Mill, going towards that intersection. So I think you're going to find it's rather small, but I think nonetheless, getting it on the record and as part of the approval would be great. So
okay, thank you. Scott, are you complete?
I'm finished unless there's other questions of board members.
Board members, anyone for the traffic engineer?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Scott, the one concern that I have, and Mr. Sayed, our chairperson, had brought it up, is the cars going to the gas station. Is there any way you think we can, I don't know, what can we do to keep that down? Because that I have seen, it's a very, people are not going too slow there. So,
That, I guess, you know, if it's something that's the, you know, again, is an issue, I would suggest that maybe that's something that there's a meeting held with Mr. Cunliffe and maybe the Howell Traffic Safety Department. And we could review, see if there's any measures that could be implemented to address that issue.
okay, is there a speed limit? Because I've been to the site many times, but I didn't notice it. Are there speed limits coming into the complex?
No, there are not, because it's kind of it's private property.
Okay.
Okay, hold on a second. So John? Mr. Aguirre,
Yes, sir.
talk to me.
What would you like to know?
I want to know about circulation speed limits within this shopping center. How do we address it?
I would guess that you'd have to ask PD for Title 39 and then post a speed limit within the plaza.
I think the Title 39 was already given for this shopping center when it was originally approved.
That's my recollection as well.
So I think it's what, Scott, 5 miles an hour? Like what's the, within a parking lot? 10
Well,
miles an hour?
this is a drive aisle, so I mean, again, it's something, and I haven't done speed studies, but if it's something where we need to post that, I mean, we have a loading zone and we have Starbucks there. You know, again, it's a question of having an appropriate speed limit that's enforceable and realistic. I mean.
But yeah, I do think that Title 39 was given when the shopping center was originally approved. So there's no
Correct.
issue with the police going in and enforcing whatever.
So this applicant can go and petition for the police to give us some recommendations, and the applicant can post some signs and with Howell Township safety officer.
I think that the shopping center already has, I mean, Mr. Kennel, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think their shopping center already has like general speed guidelines, correct?
I don't recall seeing speed limit signs through the developments. It's unusual. Typically, you don't have speed limit signs on developments like this. I mean, some of the larger regional malls, you could see some on the ring roads in the primary roadways. I don't recall. Again, I offer again, we're willing to meet with the House Traffic Safety Bureau to review options.
Scott, that would work.
Okay.
Yeah. And also, Scott, the because this is professional, or you know, the doctor's building and everything, probably just normal trucks delivering supplies and everything.
That's correct. So I mean, it's your vans, on a rare occasion, a box truck, but I mean, it's generally speaking, it's your UPS, FedEx, smaller panel vans.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members?
Mr. Chair, can speed bumps be put back there?
Oh, Nicholas, I don't know about that.
Hmm.
Scott?
Well, I mean, you could have potentially a speed table, something that's, you know, if you look at this quickly, mid-block, but again, that becomes an issue from maintenance from snow plowing. Not that we had to worry about that this year.
That's good.
But again, that's something that again can be brought up when we have our meeting. I mean, it's I'd like to get like to get their input.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to add to that conversation. I know sometimes Starbucks, when it's busy hours, can also be backed up and into that drive aisle. So just, again, in general with the conversation, it's just, you know, it's a shopping mall and a parking lot. So you're always going to have little backups and stuff, but just maybe keep that in mind as well too, for the circulation.
that and the gas station at the same time, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. In addition to the gas station and people beelining it back there, obviously, you know, Starbucks backed up on occasion can be a bit of a pain too.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Ryan.
in the back of Building D where the trash is there enough working room for a refuse facility to be picking that up and not be going out into the road?
You know, it's a good question. Jen already brought up to the applicant the fact that, you know, we don't want to see, you know, nothing but cement block enclosures for these trash enclosures. So Scott, how would the vehicles come in and get that? And depending on where they're going to be placed, of course.
But this is I'm Mr. Kennel, before you opine on that, this is an internal road to the shopping center. This is not an external like street. This is an internal road to the shopping center. So while, yes, yeah, I mean, they have to have access, obviously, and they don't want to disrupt like the overall circulation. So Scott, can you talk about the fact of where that trash enclosure is located and how the refuse would be collected and how whether or not it would or not impact the overall circulation of the parking lot?
Yeah, so the trash enclosure, as I understand it, on building D1 is located where the cursor is. So there would have to be access via the circulation aisle. I'll say, you know, tongue in cheek, this could be another traffic calming measure, but but generally refuse occurs during the off-peak hours, but they have to basically access it through this 30-foot wide circulation aisle to get to the enclosures. And this is, you know, again, given the use of this building, which is different than what was considered, you know, as an office, professional office, I would expect refuse pickup, you know, less regular than if it was a retail building.
Oh, Scott, 1 second. If we're drawing, you know, fluids and we're having Quest and others that are coming to pick up, I mean, that's going to add to the overall, you know, intensity of the site, no?
Well, I mean, but again, I guess the type of use. I mean, if there's a concern with this, and I'll check with the site engineer, we could turn this so it's 90 to the building, so that they can use this whole loading area to access the refuse, so they're not disrupting traffic flow on this circulation aisle.
Jen?
Mr. Chair, I would just jump in, and I'm going to defer to Charlie ultimately, but like, this is an office, so retail I think will be more problematic. Office is more paper products, etc., as opposed to retail, which could be a lot more refuse, and an office building doesn't really require traditional loading. It's more UPS, FedEx type deliveries. Yes. So I'm not objectionable to the configuration, but I would defer to Charlie.
So, and to add on to that, Mr. Chair, what the applicant's showing is essentially the same configuration that was per the original site plan approval when this was, you know, all retail in that same footprint. So, and the applicant, in fact, I think what's shown there is already installed as far as like the pavement area. So literally they're matching what was per the original approval. So regardless of what the use is there, this was going in as trash refuse, you know, per the original site plan. And to Jen's comment on a lot of standalone office, when we get them by themselves, our ordinance doesn't have a requirement for like a designated loading area for office. So there's not going to be a whole lot of loading associated with that as far as, you know, retail where you're getting, you know, box shipments, you know, to restock your shelves and things like that. So I don't take issue with it. It's a 30-foot circulation aisle around the perimeter of the site. It's not a 24-foot wide drive aisle where you're going to have, you know, cars coming in and out, you know, trying to fight for parking spaces. So I don't take issue with it.
And the other thing I'll offer too is, given where this is located on site,
the rest of the build out of the site is really not going to encourage additional traffic in this segment of this, I'll call it a circulation aisle. So basically what you see out there today is going to be consistent with when the center is fully built out. It won't increase the intensity of traffic along that section of roadway.
You know, Scott? Then again, it's going to block the vision between those coming in off of lanes and those coming in off of 9. And when they meet over at the gas station, you know, they're going to go, wow, whoa, where did you come from? Anyways, that's why we need to have, you know, a traffic safety officer, you know, maybe take a look at the whole thing and see what he can do to help, he or she can do to help us, you know, with the overall circulation on the site. That's all.
All right, well, I'll add, once we have that meeting, I'll add that, that issue onto the list of things to discuss.
Thank you. Mr. Orozco, you want to
Yes,
say?
yeah, just a quick question. I don't know if it's related for this situation, but I see now, I'm thinking about we're checking about the traffic safety, any officer. How about the pedestrians? I saw a bunch of people walking from Klein Zone to the place that they sell coffee. People jogging from the LA Fitness. You know, all that is going to be a lot of pedestrian. Also, how they are going to handle that in general.
Oh boy, Scott.
Well, I mean, again, we have a pretty extensive sidewalk system on site. And I don't know whether the question was to the fact that there's pedestrians on that circulation aisle we're talking about behind building D1. But if there are, it's probably encouraged by the fact that that area is kind of fenced off. You know, it's really not improved. So as the site is developed, you know, there's a whole sidewalk, if I understand, on the back side of the D1 building. Yeah.
So, you know, again, there's a safe means that maybe not so available today.
So you think it might improve when the parents drop their kids off at the Klein and they park their cars and they want to go over to the Starbucks, they'll be able to walk through the site because it won't be fenced in. They'll be able to cut through, and it should be a little safer than it is just walking on the main thoroughfare, so to speak, with the cut through
Correct.
road.
For those that decide to walk, but I think still most of them will drive, but
Yeah, because
yes, it would.
they have I saw because one of my kids, you know, he works in the Klein Zone. Sometimes they have parties and they have 40, 50, 60 kids outside, and you know, they want coffee, they want to hang out, and that's why I'm thinking, you know.
Again, as was stated earlier, you know, the full development of this site will provide, you know, pedestrian means without utilizing the main circulation aisles.
So, Mr. Chair, just to give some context to that too, right? So, portions of this site are still a pad site. So they are proposed or were proposed as part of the prior approval to have sidewalk with them. They just haven't been built. So there's areas where there's no connectivity because the improvements haven't been built. If this gets approved with the building B area, building D area, those will now have sidewalks that tie these sidewalks that dead end to nowhere into the Starbucks, into the LA Fitness. You know, the full shopping center has to get built, you know, at some point. And that's these areas of like missing connectivity. It's because, you know, the site isn't fully built out is essentially where we're at.
And Charlie, you're going to keep an eye on this one then for us.
Yeah, and I'm sure when we meet with the traffic safety officer, if they have any recommendations on additional crosswalk signage and things of that nature, there are designated crosswalks throughout the site, you know, with your standard curb ramps with the detectable warning and surfaces and things like that. You know, some of it also comes on the onus of the user. You know, you can put a sidewalk in, but if the person doesn't decide to walk on the sidewalk, then, you know, it's kind of on them at that point.
Okay. Good stuff, Charlie. Good stuff.
And Mr. Chair, before you move off the traffic, I just had one last comment, and it's really just with the parking layout. So I did note the applicant's providing 21 EV parking spaces. The state law does allow the applicant to put those in like tiered, like you have to put 1/3 of them up front at time of CO, the next third 3 years later, the next third 3 years later. To make it less of a burden on the township as far as enforcement and things like that, I just asked that the applicant be required to install that up front, just so it's not a headache for the town to track that down the road.
The applicant has no issue with that.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Got it. Thank you. Board members? Okay, no one else? Mr. Sardo?
Thank you.
Our last witness is our professional planner, Mr. Osceola, who's not with us in the room, but with us online.
Yes, Justin Osceola, licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I've been licensed since 2008. I've appeared in front of this board many times, as well as the planning board, as well as most boards in Monmouth County and throughout the region. And my license is current. I have a master's in planning from Rutgers.
Okay, Justin, we accept you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. So give it to us.
Okay, great. So as the board knows, obviously, we originally had the notice for a D6 variance. We went down to a C variance, and we're back to a D6 variance to keep the jurisdiction here. I think the testimony by the engineer and the architect was clear. The intention behind the height variance, which the HD1 zone permits a maximum height of a building at 40 feet, whereas 49.5 is proposed for both buildings. The excess height beyond the 10 feet and 10%.
Justin, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think you said 40, but you perhaps meant 45.
45. I apologize. Yes,
okay,
45.
Keep going. Sorry to stop you.
Great. No, 40. No, thank you, John. So 45 feet is a maximum height permitted. As stated by the engineer and the architect, the point of this is the parapet. It's not the building itself, it's to shield the mechanicals on the roof. So I think as Ms. Beam points out in her letter on page 5, the standard by which the board should review this height variance is whether the height is particularly suited, and the site has the ability to accommodate the excess height. I think certainly, given that the intended height is to shield the mechanicals on the roof, I think it's more than appropriate. I think it is a design alternative that is better than full compliance. So I think it's clear that the site is particularly suited for this excess height, and the site, given its size and its location, can certainly deal with that height. So that's the positive criteria for the D variance. We also require C variances for the 2 monument signs or the ground signs. There has been plenty of testimony this evening about the reasoning behind those ground signs. Obviously, it's to ensure that people can circulate on the site properly. This isn't a shopping center. People could easily get confused here. This is a medical office use where people, will be coming onto the site. They may not be familiar with the site itself. So certainly those ground signs help to fulfill, wayfinding and just to ensure that there's safety for motorists and visitors on the site. And the standard by which that C variance is judged is C2 or flexible C, and it's a showing of whether the benefits do outweigh the detriments. I think the benefits of having those signs certainly do outweigh the detriments. In fact, I would say that not having both of those signs could actually, lead to detriments, can lead to people possibly getting into accidents or getting lost or having some sort of issue on the site. Globally, I would say that there are multiple purposes of zoning that this application does advance under the MLUL, municipal land use law. I would say that this application advances criteria G. There's sufficient space certainly to accommodate these buildings. We don't require any dimensional relief, just require the height variance and the variance for the sign. I certainly think that speaks to the ability of the site to sufficiently serve this use. Criteria H speaks to the a free flow of traffic. As Mr. Kennel has testified, obviously, this is not going to be a major traffic generator. And certainly, I think the signs are really kind of, part and parcel to the advancement of that criteria as well. Also, it's worth noting, even though we don't require any variances for coverage, it is worth noting for the purposes of the record and the planning testimony that the reduction in coverage is significant. There's going to be more grass area and landscaping on the site, and certainly I think that's certainly a benefit, not just the property owner, but the town at large, and also the people that are going to be coming onto the site. So that's a positive criteria. For the negative criteria, certainly, looking at detriments, I don't see much in the way of any detriments, certainly not substantial detriments. The applicant has listened to some of the questions and concerns of the board and have made some changes, as necessary. And obviously, the applicant's going to be working with your board professionals to ensure that the architecture meets your standards. So certainly no substantial detriments to the public good associated with this application. And lastly, I see no detriment to the zone plan, the zoning ordinance. Again, in the HD1 zone, this is a permitted use. The applicant is significantly compliant with the ordinance. It certainly meets the purpose of the zone, economic development, all of those attributes that fall under the zone and also the master plan. So I think, certainly the benefits of granting these variances are substantial and certainly do not rise to the level of a substantial negative impact of the public good. I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osceola. Jen?
So what I would say is that we're going to take this in two steps. So they're not here for a D1 use variance. The use is actually permitted in the zone. So they're here for a height variance. And, we're talking about a shopping center, and I agree that the height, they're at like 45.5 feet where 45.5 feet where 45 feet is permitted, which requires the D variance. So I think that it's de minimis. You're in a shopping center. You have a multitude of commercial uses there with the BJ's and the strip center and some restaurants. So the height is itself along Route 9, I think, is de minimis, and I don't see that as a negative impact in any way. And I agree that the use itself is permitted. I agree that the signage is necessary when you come into a shopping center of this nature to figure out where you're going, and the applicant has already agreed to reduce the wall signs, which I think are redundant, to allow for the safe transportation or of the public to come to and from this use. So I don't take exception to the testimony as presented. I think that the height variance is de minimis. I think, you're in a shopping center on Route 9. If it was in a different location in town, maybe I'd have a different opinion. They've agreed to work with us on the architecture, which, you know, it has always been an issue with me. And other than that, I don't take exception to the testimony that's been provided.
Thank you, Jen. Jen, it also, should this come to fruition, will tie in the pedestrian, make it a little safer for the pedestrian traffic as well. correct?
100%, 100%.
Thank you. Okay, any questions for the planner? If we
I'm
don't
good.
have it, if we don't, all right, if we don't have any, then I would like to open it up to public, because I think
Mr.
unless, Mr. Sardo, unless you have somebody else.
No, Mr. Chairman, that's the end of our presentation. Last witness.
Mr. Chair, if I could just make one comment, I just want to put it on the record, and it was
Yeah.
in the applicant's response to one of my review letters. I had a question about the rooftop and any like amenity space, and the applicant indicated there would be no amenity space in the rooftops. Any access would just be for, you know, mechanical maintenance or emergency access purposes. So I just want to get that on the record.
Thank you for
That's correct.
clarifying. Yep. Okay. So, board
Chair?
members?
Yeah,
Yes.
just one thing, the waivers that are required, Ms. Beam, would you like me just to you know, briefly get that on the record?
No, I think that the waivers were more than adequately testified to by the engineer.
Okay, thank you.
So, board members, you know, I would like to have a motion to open to public, please.
Motion.
Second,
Okay, got it. All in favor?
aye.
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 Ayes, got it. Eileen, please open it to public for comment and questions.
Meeting will now be open to the public. If you are calling in, you could press *9 to raise or lower your hand and *6 to mute and unmute yourself. No one from the public is raising their hand.
Okay. Okay, not having anyone from public raising their hands, can I have a motion to close the public, please?
Motion.
Second.
Got it. Barillo and Hughes, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Eileen, thank you. Eileen, we're closed to public?
The meeting is now closed to public.
Okay, so I do have one question for the engineer.
Our project
Come on.
engineer, sure.
Come on, Jason.
Yes.
Look, you mentioned, and Charlie, you said this, Charlie, you said that the height of the light, the candles, right, are based on the original design and of the shopping center, and that they're keeping them at that height. So are they going to be shielded, or are we, you know, what's it going to do? What's the splash? I didn't hear anything about that, you know, since it's up against that fence line, etc. Over.
Well, the lighting is proposed in the interior of the two parking areas that we're providing adjacent to each building. There's 3 light poles total that are being added. The rest of the parking lot and those perimeter drive aisles, they already have existing light poles along those aisles. The truck delivery route behind building B, they have light poles. We're simply putting in those small parking spaces, parking areas that we're adding, we're just dropping a light fixture in there just to light up those parking areas.
Jason, I thank you. I
Sure.
mean, very, very much. Okay.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, I would just add that anything like along the rear, if you know, should be downward facing, house side shields as applicable. And then I'll just note, we cited them for the waiver. for the height and then also the intensity. They got the waiver on the last time around, so they're still within the intensities of the original approval. It's just they changed the layout, and that's why we cited for a waiver. So I take no exception.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay, Mr. Sardo, you want to give a summation?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're asking the board to act favorably on this application. I think we've shown that we have been agreeable to be flexible and meet the comments when asked. And that is reduce some of the concerns that the professionals and board members had. And we're asking the board to vote affirmatively on the application tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Well, board members, there's 7 of us, and you know, I would ask my fellow board members, what's the pleasure of the board? Unless, Andy, unless you have some objections for us.
No, you can proceed, Mr. Chairman. So any approval, because there was a lot of back and forth on architecture and traffic. So any approval, if that's the will of the board, would be contingent upon the applicants, professionals working with the borough, with the zoning board's professionals in regard to those points. So it's getting late. I'm sorry to fade, but
No, it's
yeah.
okay, Andy. You caught it all, Andy?
Yeah.
You got it all? That's all that matters. As you know, the architect, and then of course, working, Mr. Kennel and the professionals working closely with the Howell Township Traffic Safety Officer. You know, it always helps, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, you know, fellow board members, what's the pleasure of this board on this particular application? As you've heard all the testimony and all the concessions that have been placed before us.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, based on the findings of fact and the situation with the architecture will be addressed with our planner to her satisfaction, as well as the traffic issues that we need to make sure is brought to the safety issues are taken care of. I believe the site is actually an improvement on what I visualized this was going to be in the initial part of this whole complex, because I did hear 2 of the previous cases. And I think the applicant is actually making the place look a little bit better. I just think if we can fine tune the architectural building and take care of the traffic issues, I think I'm okay with it the way it is right now, and I make a motion to approve.
Well, we got a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I second.
Mr. Ryan. Mr. Ryan seconds. Mr. Hughes, did you want to?
Nope, I was just going to second, sir, but Mr. Ryan got it. Beautiful.
So, Mr. Ryan, you second. Okay. Eileen, may we have a roll call, please?
Sure, Mr. Barillo,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Mertens,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Rubel,
Yes.
and Chairman Saya.
You know, Mr. Sardo, Jason, team, I know we hold you to a high standard, and you know, we respect our township tremendously, and we always look for the improvement in this township. So I thank you for your presentation and your professionalism. And with that, I vote yes.
Application is approved.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Okay. You have a good evening, sir.
You too.
Okay, fellow
Good night,
board
everybody.
members. Good night. Fellow board members, Eileen, you're going to tell us when the next meeting is, please?
The next meeting is March 27th.
March 27th, okay.
2 weeks, in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. And Eileen, if anyone needs to certify on anything that's on the agenda, you'll let them know?
Yes.
Okay, good. Do we have any other house cleaning?
That's it for me.
Okay, listen, thank you, everyone. You know, appreciate all of you, taking your time, the volunteering, the professional work that's
Yep.
done and that we put into this. Sometimes I walk away feeling like, you know, we're finally making some headway and moving in the right direction. So
Absolutely.
everyone have a great week, and warmer weather's coming later in the week. And just be safe, be healthy, be happy, and we'll see you guys on the 27th.
Well, Mr. Chair, thank you for your guidance, and I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a
Second.
second? We got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.